But don't you think, don't you think they tend to ignore you and get the people who don't have anything problem?
Do I think that employers in general tend to
ignore and you know, get people who don't have anything supposedly?
I couldn't make that broad of a statement, but I can say that they are obligated to give people with cognitive disabilities equal footing and a fair chance with everyone else if they can do the job, if they can perform the essential functions of the job with or without a reasonable accommodation. So they're not allowed to just say, boy, this person seems to have some mental or physical disability, we're going to put them in the reject pile. That's very reckless to do.
Well, guys, anybody else otherwise trying to keep things on track here? No other big questions here?
I'll be around afterwards.
Yeah, okay, you got what's back here.
Brian, could you speak a little bit on what do you see trends either going forward now or in the future regarding preferential hiring trends, which are not, may not be falling under, quote, discrimination requirements, but are very prevalent today. I'll cite a couple examples. A lot of human resource agencies, place right on the interview, right on the questionnaire, that they are looking for people that are on, I'm not going to use the exact terms, I don't have it right, but people who are on welfare will have preferential treatment over those who are not. We will hire preferentially veterans over non-veterans. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, veterans deserve a better shake than others, but it's part of, those aren't protected class, but how much do you see potentially going forward in the future? That's really no requirement for what the job duties are, but they are placing an artificial barrier for those that aren't meeting that particular criteria. Where do you see that going in the future?
Well, I think that's risky for employers to do. This would be an example of we're going to prefer people who are on welfare. I mean, frankly, you can even say we're going to prefer people who live in West County. We're going to prefer people who went to the University of Illinois for school. And those are certainly not protected classes. So at first blush, it seems okay to do, and it is okay to do just based on that. But the law protects more than just what's called adverse treatment. Okay, adverse treatment would be discriminating against someone for one of these protected reasons. It also protects what's called adverse impact. And adverse impact is not an intentional doing, but if it's say, and I was going to mention this with the criminal history, if a company has a policy not to hire anyone with any criminal history, well, that could have an indirect impact on people, a disproportionately high impact on people of certain classes. For instance, I don't know, maybe there's a lot more men on welfare. Maybe there's a lot more African Americans on welfare. Maybe if the hiring manager went to a particular college that and wants to prefer people from that college, well, at first blush that seems okay. But what if it's an all men's college? Well, then it's going to be a problem because he's effectively saying I'm just going to hire men. Okay. So I think what they have to be careful of and what they have to think through is this going to have an adverse impact on the people we hire? Now that's still going to be okay as long as it's business related. The big case that happened about 30 years ago was there was I think it was a power plant in North Carolina that said, we're only going to hire people with college degrees, okay? Well, or high school degrees. We're only going to hire people with high school degrees. Well, that sounds fine, doesn't it? Well, as it turned out, where they were at the time, the fact was that there were very few racial minorities who had high school degrees. So while this seemed like an okay policy, and it was okay on its face, it had an adverse impact on the hiring, and so it was an illegal policy. So I think companies want to be smart about what's the business motivation for this. Is it good for PR? Is it good for the applicants? what's the business reason for this? And, you know, I think go from there. If there is a good reason, and it is going to be job related, okay, that's fine. But I think they need to be careful about what sort of impact this would have on the people who do get hired.
One of the items that's out there, and I wasn't in here a minute ago, did you speak on GINA?
No.
Okay. GINA is the Genome, are you ready for this? Genome Identification Non-Disclosure Act. This is your DNA. And one of the reasons this has come up, and I want your comment on this, healthcare, how many people know healthcare cost has gone through the ceiling? Okay. How many people know that employers would really rather get out of the insurance business because it's very expensive? If employers have your DNA information, which says that you're prone to heart attack, you're prone to diabetes, you're prone to obesity, ad infinitum. Going back, and I think they said it's 4 generations, 4 steps, they can't use that information not to hire you because you will drive their insurance premiums through the roof. Any comment on this?
It certainly got a lot of press and gets a lot of attention because it is, you know, rather disturbing and raises all sorts of issues regarding privacy and invasion of privacy. As a practical matter, I haven't, you know, seen
It
it
really
come up.
comes out in the wellness programs.
In the wellness
programs.
programs.
They have to be careful with your information out of the wellness program.
That's true. That's true. So, you know, first of all, they have to ask for this information. But you're right. Even if you're going through a wellness program or an EAP program, EAPs are very good about keeping their information very, you know, very private, just between you and the EAP. I guess we'll have to see, you know, if that really takes off with them using that very detailed information for hiring purposes or even the health insurance benefits you may or may not get.
Okay,
One more question.
One more question. Specifically,
This is the last.
addressing that point, there was a news article, I believe, on the radio last week that specifically, and I think that it was St. John's Mercy, has made a decision not to hire anyone that smokes because of the impact on their health care insurance costs. Will that be a test case? Is that something that's going to fly?
You know, as far as GINA goes, I don't know that would implicate GINA, you know, because I don't think that really gets into DNA. But we talked about this earlier, and in general, a company can't do that, can't say we're not going to hire you or we're going to discriminate against someone because that person smokes on his or her own personal time. But the reason that St. John's can do it and, you know, Mercy Health Systems can do it is because they're a religious-based organization, and that religious-based organizations are an exception to that rule. And they're a healthcare provider too.
Well,
So,
if they specifically say, as they did in the news article, that it wasn't for a religious person, we don't believe in people smoking because it harms your body, because it's religious, it was specifically pointed out that it was due to the impact cost on insurance.
well, I think because they're a health care provider, that's an exception to that general rule that they can't discriminate against smokers. If it were a non-healthcare provider, then they couldn't say that. They'd be in big trouble if they said that. So that does strike people as unusual, and those news stories, I think, you know, I'm not saying it should or shouldn't have, but it wasn't real clear that, you know, hey, St. John's can do this because they're a healthcare provider or a religious institution. That wasn't real clear, and so people heard that and said, you know, just assumed it applied to other you know, secular organizations.
Well, this has been a great session here with Brian. Thank you very much for Brian. And you probably be around for a couple minutes afterwards here, Brian, if somebody had a personal question to ask him. Okay. So he'll be around. And I really, I think obviously it was energized as far as the question was concerned. It was a lot of questions being asked here. So we're into the next.